everyone, I'm Andrea Chang, tech reporter at the Los Angeles Times. I'm chatting with my colleague, fellow tech reporter Chris O'Brien, who's joining us from the Moscone Center in San Francisco, where he's been covering Google I/O. Chris, thanks for joining us today.
Sure, happy to be here.
It's pretty crazy. Can you give us like the rundown of what it's like to be at Google I/O for those of us who have never been? I mean, what can you expect and how intense is it there?
It's pretty crazy, and it's, as you might expect, it's pretty nerdy too. I mean, it is at its heart officially a developer's event. So, I was here a few weeks ago for the Apple Developers Conference, and it's a little bit more consumer-y, more of a consumer-y feel, where it feels like they're talking to regular folks. Whereas here you walk in and there's a giant picture from floor to ceiling of a rack of servers. Which is not the most exciting thing for most average folks at home, but that's sort of Google for you. Excuse me, a giant picture of servers in the hallway. So,
Right.
And then there's, as you also not surprising, lots of people with Google Glass walking around. In fact, I'm surrounded by people wearing Google Glass. I feel like I'm the only one who doesn't have them. Look, there's someone behind me wearing Google Glass. They had a big booth downstairs when you walk in to try them. But that does kind of go to, excuse me, Google's message here, which I think is, they're trying to be on everywhere in your life and every part of your body. And they have a pretty ambitious plan for getting there.
Right, and actually that was my first question for you is, it seemed like one of the big themes was this connected world, that what Google is trying to do is be part of every single part of your life, and obviously that's something that Amazon wants to do, that Apple wants to do. So let's just go into some of the announcements. I read your story on LATimes.com, and there's wearables and Android for cars and Android TV and Google Fit. So for you, what was maybe the most interesting new announcement or product that you saw today?
Well, it was really the combination of them. Like no single thing, you kind of looked at it and you thought like, oh wow, that's so revolutionary. I've never seen anything like that before. It was more like Google is, if they're in like 75% of your life, like they're going for the 100% now. I think in terms of consumers, the Android Auto stuff will be interesting. It seems like that may find its way into a lot of cars in the fall. And Android TV seems to be on its way. They've made several attempts to get onto your television. I think this is their third or fourth. That will be coming around later this year, early next year.
And Chris, can you run us through kind of what those two things do, Android for cars and Android TV? What is it?
Sure. I mean, Android with your car, it's similar in some ways to what Apple has with its CarPlay system. I mean, you walk into your car, you connect your smartphone, and really for all this stuff we're talking about, and the smartphone becomes kind of the hub of whatever piece of this we're talking about. But you plug your Android phone into your car, and then it just sort of.
I think we just lost Chris there for a second. He is, as I mentioned to you guys, at the Moscone Center with somewhat spotty Wi-Fi. Chris, are you there?
Yeah, I can see you. Can you hear me?
Okay, yep, I can hear you. I think we lost you after you said that it's similar to I think what we're seeing with Android and other devices, where it makes the smartphone the hub.
Yeah, and similar to Apple, you plug it into your car, and the screen kind of moves from the screen of your phone to a screen in the car that's voice activated. You can swipe it and touch it, but it's mostly meant to be a hands-free kind of experience where, really the content from your phone, whether it's music or maps or search or whatever, you get right there on a screen, touch screen in your car. And then, with Android TV, it's sort of a similar thing. You use your smartphone to control the platform on your TV to search for movies and TV and organize your shows and whatnot. With the Android Wear and the Smartwatch program, it's a similar thing. The smartwatch becomes kind of an adjunct of your phone, which you can use to control the phone, and some of these other devices as well. Like you can use the smartwatch to control your Android TV and your phone. So it all becomes this very sort of a complicated interconnected web of these things that all can be used to connect to each other and control each other.
Sure. Now, going back to Android TV, I mean, that sounded pretty exciting, but I think as a consumer, a lot of people wonder, there's so many different options out there when it comes to like the smart TV. So you've got Android TV. How is that different from something like Roku or Apple TV or Amazon Fire TV or Chromecast? I mean, you're obviously an expert in this. How do you, advise consumers in terms of how you choose just one?
Well, this is the tricky thing. I mean, there were a lot of details that were kind of left out, I think, that answer some of those questions. Those are all good questions, I think. Part of it is it's a little fuzzy on when we're going to actually see this. Mm-hmm. It seems like a thing that's going to be built into some manufacturers' television, like Sony and Sharp. Other people are going to be putting it on set-top boxes. I think the thing that'll be interesting to watch, and consumers will have some time to watch this, is that they are opening up that platform for developers to write apps for. There's going to be an Android TV app store that sort of works alongside its Play Store. And so, part of that I think will be, what do developers do with this in the next few months when they have time to play with this? What kind of apps do they come up with it? I'll certainly say, they did some gaming demonstrations that were pretty impressive. I mean, they did build in a lot of hardware as part of the service that created a pretty console gaming-like experience in some of the demos they did. So I think, again, that'll be really interesting if game developers rally around this thing and write a lot of games for Android TV. It could become a very interesting video gaming platform.
Sure. And then moving over to wearables, you mentioned these smartwatches running the Android platform. What kinds of functionalities do they have? And then this is a question I think you and I hear a lot from consumers. What do we think is actually the potential for wearables? Is this something that just early adopters are going to be interested in, or do you expect to see smartwatches become really widespread, whereas in a couple years from now, everyone's got one on their wrist?
I still think it's going to be a thing for the early adopters. I'll say two things about that. One, I was more impressed with the design of some of the ones they showed than I expected to be. But at the same time, they really are a device that kind of supplements your other devices. So the argument kind of goes, you're looking at your smartwatch, your smartphone 125 times a day. If you strap this thing to your wrist, we could help you maybe avoid half those times where you have to pull it out of your pocket. As a consumer, am I going to go spend $100, $200, $300 for something like that? I don't know. But, there were some nifty, again, this is something developers can write apps for. And so they showed some interesting examples of that. One of them where, you speak into the watch. It basically searches on your phone and pulls up a recipe. And so, you can sort of scroll through the recipe on your watch, and it was a decent enough screen that you could really read the recipe, and it's a waterproof device. So, you can sort of see like, okay, that could be handy if you're kind of cooking, and instead of walking back and forth to your phone or, a cookbook, you've just got this watch you can glance down at. One of the Google execs ordered a pizza off the smartwatch.
That's awesome.
During the presentation, and he did it in like 15 seconds.
Right.
So again, I think in some ways they're sort of dependent on developers to help them make a mass market thing, to give people a compelling reason to feel like, yes, this is a must-have gadget that lets me fill in some use in between my my smartphone, my tablet, my connected car, my TV.
Sure. Sure.
But I think, again, like everyone has that question, like, how many of these things can you really manage in your life?
Right. So Google I/O is going on for 2 days. Today was the first day. From what you've seen so far, the big question with with Google, I always feel like, is how are they doing when compared up against Apple? So you hear these announcements today, you checked out some of the products. Do you feel like the Android operating system is far ahead of iOS right now, or about neck and neck, or do you think that Apple still continues to be number one for shoppers?
Well, it's very complex measurement, and in part it's complicated because now the sort of battle, in a sense, has broadened to how it works across all these devices. And so, if you're just looking at the smartphones, which is kind of traditionally the way we think about this, or even the tablets, we can still look at the numbers and say, well, Android's number one by far in terms of market share. It's now, they claimed, the number one market share for tablets this past year. So again, by the numbers, it's big. They said they're paying a lot more out to developers, but I think there's still a gap there with Apple in terms of the folks who are here at these kind of shows, how much money they're able to make on Android and Apple. That still tilts in favor of Apple. But at the same time, the ability to connect all this stuff right now, I would say, we still haven't seen Apple actually launch a smartwatch, which is supposedly coming in the fall. So they're Android's ahead of the game on that. Apple's had Apple TV, but hasn't done a big update for that for a while. So that's sort of been sitting around, and have to see how Android TV stacks up when it actually comes out. So it's becoming a very complicated race, I think, between the two of them. But again, they're both headed to that same area, which is they don't want you to just buy the smartphone or the tablet or to use this service or that service. Like, they really want to be the thing that surrounds you throughout your day.
Right. And it seems like the more products there are, the harder it is going to be to break out of an ecosystem once you're in it. So, down the line, someone's going to be primarily an Android person or primarily an iOS person. I guess that 10% has already happened.
Yeah. You've heard the term. I would say several times throughout the day I've heard the term walled garden. While I've been here, people just referring to that notion that, like, they're kind of sort of gently putting their arms around you, but if you actually try to break away, it's not such an easy embrace to get out of.
I like that, and it's creepy. Last question for you. I was following along on your Twitter as you were watching the keynote, and I saw something about protesters, and you just have these fun details that the Wi-Fi was really spotty, which is kind of ironic given that it's a big tech event. And then a protester got up, is that right, and started yelling?
Well, two of them actually. One, it was just sort of surreal. There's a protest, and I think it started after I got in here, but there's two protests that have been going on. One has to do with Google's impact on San Francisco and concerns about gentrification here. And then the other separate one is sort of Google's role, I guess, as sort of big brother. It's whether it's feeding your stuff to the NSA and helping people spy on you. And so a woman got up and at the front of the stage and complained that she'd been evicted by a Google executive. And it was a little surreal because it took about 5 minutes or so for someone from Google to actually walk up to the stage and, kind of nudge her out of the scene while the guy on stage continued to just give his keynote, probably wondering where security was and how this person got in front of him. And then another person got up later and was accusing Google of being a totalitarian company that was building robots to kill people.
Yeah, I'm kind of concerned for you about the security, because I feel like usually at these tech events, it's like very, you gotta line up and you need to be on the press list and all that. Yikes. Yeah. Well, Chris, I want to thank you for joining us today. It's been a lot of fun. If you guys want to follow along with our tech coverage online, head over to latimes.com/technology, and you can follow Chris on Twitter at O'Brien, and you can follow me at @Andrea Chang. Thanks a lot.
All right, thanks.